September 28th, 2020 City Council meeting to order. Because of COVID-19 restrictions, our meeting tonight is being held virtually via Zoom. Public comments for this meeting were accepted in advance by mail and email. These comments will be read into the public record shortly. If you'd like to submit a public comment for our next meeting, please visit our website at www.merriam.org and follow the directions listed there. The customary reminders are in place for the council. Speak clearly, slowly, state your name prior to speaking, and raise your hand if you have a question. Again, I can only see half of you, so I'm going to need some help from our moderator to make sure I get everybody's questions in. City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Mayor Sissom.
Here.
Councilmember DeBold.
Here.
Councilmember Hands.
Here.
Councilmember Caldwell.
Here.
Councilmember Knapp.
Here.
Councilmember Neal.
Here.
Councilmember Pape.
Here.
Councilmember Silvers.
Here.
Councilmember Yodrich.
Here.
Very good. Welcome, everyone. We're going to move to public comments. And Julie, would you please read any public comments that were submitted in advance into the record?
Yes, Mayor. We have one public comment tonight. This is from S. Henderson at 5821 Mackey Street. It says, I'm writing in response to a public comment made by Sam Mateer. I live on Mackey Street here in Merriam. When I moved into the neighborhood 2 years ago in the spring, a litter of feral kittens were in my backyard in a window well. That year, I adopted one of those, and my daughter found homes for 3 of the 5 were homed. A neighbor who has since moved knew the process recommended by the local animal shelters to trap and neuter feral cats, thereby decreasing future populations. Feeding them makes it easier to trap them. She was able to get 2 neutered. Since that time, on my own, I trapped a cat, which I think was more of a stray domestic who no longer has a home for whatever reason. I took it to 2 shelters and was turned away because they were full. The SPCA on Antioch told me to call Merriam Animal Control at the police department. Well, that was a frustrating experience because I found out there is no animal control in Merriam, at least none that will come get feral cats and take them away. Also, I sought out a program I heard of that would come to your neighborhood and trap several cats at once for you and take them away, neuter, and bring them back to release, which they say is the only humane way they do it. Unfortunately, when they got my address as Johnson County instead of Kansas City, Kansas, they would not proceed to schedule it. Then COVID happened and all services for this shut down all summer. So the only option is to trap and release, which myself and another neighbor have done for 4 cats at our own expense. Kansas City Spay and Neuter, now called Pet Rescue, will spay or neuter and gives them a rabies shot for $35. So as a citizen, I think I and other neighbors have made the recommended attempts to decrease the feral population, and it's working. Mr. Mateer, I have only known because he walks his dog off leash down our street, and the dog Bella has run up into my yard and garage and startled me and chased my cat, which was not appreciated. Thank you for your time. And that was it.
Very good. Thank you for reading that. We're going to move into the consent agenda section of our meeting, and all items listed under the heading are considered to be routine by the City Council and may be enacted in one motion. There's no separate discussion of these items unless a council member requests, in which case that item is removed from the consent agenda and considered separate. We have 2 items on the agenda this evening. Does any member of the council wish either of these items removed? Ms. Hands?
Yes, I would like item number 2 removed, please.
Very good. We will remove item number 2, and that leaves item number 1 on its own, which is consider approval of the minutes of the City Council meeting held September 14, 2020. And unless there's any discussion on this item, I'll accept the motion in a second. Bob Pape,
Yeah, Mayor, I would move that the council approve consent agenda item number 1.
do I have a second? Scott?
This is Scott Diebold. I'll second that.
Motion second made, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember DeBold,
Aye.
Councilmember Hans,
Aye.
Councilmember Caldwell,
Aye.
Councilmember Knapp,
Aye.
Councilmember Neal,
Aye.
Councilmember Pape,
Aye.
Councilmember Silvers,
Aye.
Councilmember Yodrich.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Very good. We'll move to the second item under the consent agenda, which is consider approval of an agreement to purchase tasers in 2021. Ms. Hans, did you have a question?
I do. I have no fault with the motion at all. I would just like to have the name of the funding source instead of just the budget number, please.
Well,
Chief McLaughlin is on a call. There we go.
That is the Equipment Reserve Fund.
It would be the reserve fund.
Yeah. Good teamwork.
See how smart I am?
Very good.
You sound a little different.
Thank you. That's all I needed to know, and I'm willing to make a motion if no one else has questions.
no questions? I'll accept the motion in a second. Go right ahead.
I move that council approve an agreement to purchase lasers or tasers as stated in the action form.
And a second, Bob Pape.
I'll second, Mayor.
Motion second made, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Hans,
Aye.
Councilmember Caldwell,
Aye.
Councilmember Knapp,
Aye.
Councilmember Neal,
Aye.
Councilmember Pape,
Aye.
Councilmember Silvers,
Aye.
Councilmember Yodrich,
Aye.
Councilmember DeBold.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Very good. Moving to the mayor's report. The next 4 items on the agenda are all related to Tract B of the Merriam Point redevelopment project. And staff will make presentations covering all 4 items, and then there will be a series of motions related to these items. All items must be approved in order for the project to move forward. Once the presentation is over, I will ask council for questions. We will answer questions one at a time. Please indicate if you have a question by physically raising your hand, and don't forget to state your name before you begin speaking. Mr. Engel, would you please give the staff presentation at this time on these 4 items?
I sure will, Mayor. Thank you. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here real quick. I assume everybody can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. The topic before you tonight is the termination of the successful Merriam Point project. It's an item we discussed in the past briefly several times over the last few months, so it's not a new concept. Council should be familiar with it. There's going to be several agreements and several motions to make this happen, but it's really just a simple arrangement at its core and its intent. I want to point out that these agreements have been written primarily by Joe Serrano, our bond counsel with Kutek Rock. So he's on the line if there's any questions about the agreements, mechanical questions about the agreement, do want to point out that he is on the line, and I appreciate all the help he's given me. This hasn't been the easiest of transactions, despite the fact that it really is a simple arrangement. So the flow of the meeting this evening is going to be, we've got these 4 items, as Mayor said, that are going to be presented as one combined item with a series of votes at the conclusion. The reason for that is because this project is really one big project. If council determines they don't want to vote in the affirmative on any one of these 4 items, really all subsequent approvals are not needed. Those items are the resolution for termination of Merriam Point. That's going to be, that resolution is the controlling document that controls the 5 agreements that are listed underneath there. Those are the termination agreement, the acknowledgement and release, the assignment of developer rights, escrow agreement, termination and release of covenants, easements, and reservations. Assuming that council is in agreement that that's a good idea and approves that to the affirmative, we're going to move on to a resolution for transfer of I-35 TIF funds. And then there's going to be 2 planning commission items that Brian's going to briefly share with council that are from the September 2nd Planning Commission meeting that are tied to Track B. Well, Track B is going to get most of the attention tonight. I think it's appropriate, as I was planning for this, that we just take a few minutes to reflect, really to celebrate one of what I would consider to be one of the most successful developments in JOCO, and that's Merriam Point, since that's actually what we are terminating with Track B here, or that's what the recommendation is. So there's a little bit of history here. What you see here is you got 67th Street on the right. You've got I-35 running on the bottom half, the train tracks, the lumber yard, and public works at the top of the picture. And this is the Lucent / AT&T building. If you take a look just to the left of center, you can see a drainage ditch that's in there. That drainage comes from Quail Creek that runs out of the neighborhood there to the east of I-35. The furthest back I could find pictures, aerials, were from the 50s, and that's always been a drainage district. I think that's just important to point out because that's all that was ever meant to be. That's the way that God intended, or whoever it was that designed I-35 in those neighborhoods. So I think that's just a good historical perspective of what was going on at that site pre-2003. I think those buildings were built back in the 60s. So originally, the development on this site was contemplated to be retail. And in 2004, the city entered into the original TIF agreement with the original developers. And by 2004, you can see the grading had started. You can see that what is now Track B, at this point in time, it's untouched because it was, again, never contemplated to be developable. Its purpose was drainage. It didn't really have any, nobody really thought it was commercially viable or that it had any economic value. By 2007, we had the roundabout installed. I call that the lonely roundabout because that was the way I took home for about 5 or 6 years and always wondered why there was just a roundabout there and nothing else. The retaining wall was really in there. If you look in the northwest corner right there along 67th and the railroad tracks, the retaining wall was put in there. But this was pretty much what you had other than Hyundai. By 2007, the Hyundai there to the far left was successfully completed. However, it was during this period that we went through the Great Recession and the original developers went bankrupt, and new developers led by Dave Block and Dave Christie bought the property and bought the TIF incentives at that time. Again, it's important to point out that this property was empty, all of it, for other than the roundabout, for almost 7 years for those that have been around. It was nothing for a long time. By 2012, the RDA had been updated, so the redevelopment agreement from 2004 had been updated with the new developers, Merriam Investors, made up of Dave Block and Dave Christie, and it included Hendrick as a co-developer. And construction began on 3 more dealerships. So you can see there, that is Hendrick Toyota coming online in 2012. By 2014, we had 4 successful dealerships. And really the only question was what Group 1, the owner of the vacant property to the north of Hyundai, was going to do with it. Again, Track B never really being considered as developable from the city's perspective. So really, we were almost at I would argue we were at a successful development at that point with just 1 parcel that was left. Again, the reason that to put it in perspective of why I think this has been a successful development independent of the Track B or the Group 1, financial, really, at its heart. In 2019, again, just to provide perspective, in 2019, those 4 dealerships in that Merriam Point development paid in combined property taxes $2 million and paid almost $1 million in sales tax. I can't give you more specific detail than that because state statute says I can't, but you can do the math. You can divide 2 million in property tax and 1 million in sales tax by the 4 parcels that are there and kind of figure out what the economic impact that site has. To put it another way, those 4 dealerships produced more revenue for the general fund than all the combined property taxes paid by our 5,200 residents. 5,200 residents pay property tax. I know none of us like to pay property tax, but those 4 dealerships there produced more money in 2019 for the general fund than all the property taxes that the residents pay in our community. So just to kind of give you an idea of why that's a very successful dealership. Again, why aren't we been able to grow our community? Why we've been able to hold the property tax mill despite the fact that we're growing our community is because of investments that the city has made with our business partners in our community. So now that we've had, kind of the opportunity to reflect on how important the Merriam Point development as a whole is, I kind of want to drill down track B real quick, but I want to talk about it within the context of within the Merriam Point development. So I'm going to kind of go real fast here, but really what you're looking at here is you're looking on Frontage Road North, right in the center of this pic. This is 2017, thanks to the miracle of Google Maps. Right there in the middle is the roundabout. Looking north, we're now shifting over to the west. This is track B. This was as nature intended. It's been here pre-50s. You can see the Hyundai dealership. But in 07, nothing was there. By 11, the city had invested in some curb and gutter. We had put in some sidewalks. We had invested in some decorative light poles, but really there was no dealership there. So by August 2011, track B was what track B was, and that's what it was always intended to be. It was in October of 14, as we move forward here by a couple of years, that we take a look at it. We've got some more growth in track B. We've got some water in there. That's what it's designed to do. But we also have a very successful 3 dealerships on the north end of that development. Group 1 still has not developed their lot, but the north end had developed, track B being what track B was. And by the next year, by 15, pretty much starting to look a little ratty, but that's by design what it was supposed to look like. It's only in late 16, early 17 that things started to occur on that site. Specifically, what happened on that site is the owner of track B, which was Richard Webb, who owns Infinity there to the right, started to make some investments in that property. He looked at that property and saw something that previous owners had not, the city, to be quite honest with you, really did not see. But he looked at that and saw that if he could find partners that would help him financially develop this really could be a revenue producing parcel. It's important to point out that this assessed at 0. There's not a whole lot of properties in Johnson County that assessed at 0. This made no money for anyone other than just taking water off the neighborhood to the east of I-35. It made no one any money. Didn't make the schools, didn't make the city, didn't make the property owner, didn't make the developer, the county, the state, anyone else any money. But again, Richard Webb looked at this and said that I guess to say he had the vision, he decided that he was going to start to invest some money in this site. First thing he did was remove all of the trees. That's a significant investment. If you think about, if you've ever had one tree removed from your property, you can only imagine what it costs to have all of these trees removed from your property. And I think it's important to point out that he did all of this at risk. We didn't have an agreement with him at this point when all this work had been done. As a matter of fact, all of the work that has been done on this site has been paid for by Richard Webb. The city has $0 as of this today invested in this property. This is property that Richard Webb assumed the risk and the liability of this, went out and sought funding. And the city, seeing that he was serious and he was willing to take on that risk, decided in 2017 to become an equity partner, if you will, through TIF, and pledge $6 million to the required infrastructure improvements that would be required for him to bring a dealership onto that lot. And I mean, just kind of give you, if you look at that, if you look at the grade that's there, if you look on the left of Infinity there, that wall that's back there on the back corner, that's a 10-foot wall. You're talking about a lot of dirt and a lot of infrastructure to develop it. And it's all TIF eligible. And at that time, the council decided that we would partner with him in terms of $6 million for that investment. He would have until July of 2020 to put a dealership in there, which we eventually extended for him. Council approved that in July of 2017. By mid 2018, got ahead of myself here. By mid 2018, work had started on this site with the grading and the grubbing, and you can see heavy equipment has moved in there. This is March, I believe, or this is May of 2018, and then by April of 2019, the infrastructure, the moving of utilities, all of that work was done on site. I apologize. It would have been great if Google would have drove by in between here, but I do have some pictures just to kind of give you an idea of what's in the ground, because I think it's important. If you drive by and take a look at that site right now, what you see on that site right now is a pad ready site. It's important to understand what's actually in the ground on that site. So this is looking at track B after he removed all of the trees. This is from the north. There's the Infinity dealership there at the bottom of the picture. You can see the wing walls on the left where the water comes in underneath frontage road, flows to the back, flows underneath the railroad tracks, empties out into the, essentially runs through Public Works and dumps into Turkey Creek. This is the concrete channel that was inserted in that box. This is what now conveys that water and runs that water from underneath frontage road and I-35 and conveys it to the railroad tracks. There's a better picture of it here. I just wanted to show off the snazzy pictures that I'll never be able to use again. To kind of really put some scale on this, if you look in the lower right hand, you're going to see some heavy Caterpillar equipment down there. You're also going to see there's a tractor, there's backhoes, there's a bulldozer. You've got that red KC line box down there, which is essentially what the back of a 18-wheeler rig looks like. Now look at that in scale to that concrete box. That's a lot of concrete. That's a lot of concrete, and that's a lot of dirt that was brought into that site to make this a developable site. And this is Richard Webb is on the hook for all of this as part of our redevelopment agreement with him. So just to kind of, again, point out what's actually in the ground there, because I think it's important that we understand that. Then we come to today. This is what it looks like today. Well, this is what it looked like last Wednesday. I don't know what it looks like today, but last Wednesday, it's probably wet today. But as of last Wednesday, we've got a pad ready site out there. You can see that wall that was 10 foot deep that was over on the back corner of Infinity is now gone and underground. And you've got a nice level pad ready site. What's not reflected in all my cool aerial pictures and my historical Google Maps is what's occurred on the Group 1 property. Specifically, the Reed family has moved to town. They purchased the Hyundai dealership and turned that business around, improved the numbers there. And they've purchased the vacant lot that they're building on, and they've invested millions of dollars into constructing their new Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram facility that you can see in that picture. And it's because of that development that we're actually having this conversation tonight about Track B, because simply put, Mr. Reed wants to buy Mr. Webb's property, and the city's in the way. The city's in the way for good reason, because the city is invested in this property, or it's pledged to invest in this property. And we need to make sure that we honor the intent of the original agreement. We need to make sure that the things that the city wanted out of this, the city still gets, because there will be an investment. But ultimately, what we want to do is we want to honor the intent of those agreements and facilitate their transaction between them, and then you really get out of the way. That's really what we should be doing as government. So how are we going to do that? Well, with these agreements: resolution for termination of Merriam Point, resolution for a transfer, approval of a preliminary development plan, and dedication of easements. The first one we're going to talk about, and where we're going to spend the majority of the rest of my time before I turn it over to Brian, is the termination agreement. Again, governed by the resolution, but it's the termination agreement that is probably the most it's the master document. It's really the meat and potatoes of this agreement. And the termination agreement spells out what the remaining obligations would be between Mr. Webb and the city. Specifically, Track B must be sold to Mr. Reed. The site work needs to be completed by 12/31/21, and Mr. Webb must submit $5 million in eligible expenses. If he does that, he's eligible for $5 million in TIF, which we will deposit in an escrow, assuming the council approves these agreements. So to illustrate really what this agreement's about, on the right, you've got the termination agreement terms in bullet form. And then in the left is the redevelopment agreement. That's the current agreement. Again, it's important to point out, we are living under an agreement with Mr. Webb. If we do nothing this evening, this is the deal that we are currently living under with Mr. Webb. So the current agreement, the current RDA, and the intent of it was that we would get a 45,000 square foot dealership. The city would invest $6 million in TIF eligible infrastructure. We would pay once it was operational. Because it hasn't become operational, that's why the city has not paid a dime on any of the millions of dollars that have occurred on that site. Mr. Webb has until 12/31/21 to open that dealership. It only contemplates a single brand, just a single dealership, whatever it happens to be. And the TIF would run until July 2023. So the TIF would not expire until the end of the Merriam Point TIF as a full development, which is 2023. So in order for us to really turn this into a win-win-win scenario, a win for Mr. Reed, a win for Mr. Webb, and a win for the city, these were the terms that we were able to negotiate to leverage against what the current RDA says versus what we believe is fair based on the effort that Mr. Webb's put forward so far. So termination agreement, this is basically what the city gets out of it. There's a 4-acre outdoor showroom and a potential brand expansion. When Brian gets into the planning commission items, you're going to see that on one of those maps, there is an outline for a future dealership to come on to Track B. Now, there's nothing that compels or guarantees that's going to happen, and I don't think that that's a bad deal whether it happens or doesn't. I think it'd be super if we had one there, but I don't think it's required for this to be considered successful. Instead of $6 million in TIF, we're gonna save the taxpayers $1 million, and we're gonna commit $5 million to TIF. I can tell you that Mr. Webb has spent more than $5 million developing that site. Payable at completion of the construction, which needs to be done by 12/31/21. That is the same date as the current RDA. I will tell you that Mr. Reed and Mr. Webb are both motivated to see this done and delivered upon. So I would argue it will be considerably sooner than 12/31/21. Instead of one brand, you're looking at Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, and again, potential future use. That, because you've got 4 brands there, I think is why this, even if we don't get a new dealership, this is a good deal. If Mr. Webb puts in a dealership there, there's a lot of what I would call dead space. There's a lot of showroom space where you've got 3 cars inside and then a lot of buildings and offices. If Mr. Webb is able to sell this to Mr. Reed and that whole Track B is full of cars per square foot, it's going to produce more revenue in sold cars than it will if there's a building there. And then I think most importantly for the taxpayers, really for all of us, is that the TIF terminates upon completion. So the Merriam Point TIF expires, and then we can start to return that to the tax rolls. So again, I just shared with you earlier what the property tax and the sales tax implications are of 4 dealerships that existed there in 2019. The addition of 8 acres of 4 dealerships, I think I don't need to share with you the potential economic impact that would have, but pulling those things back on the tax rolls means that all those property taxes that have been off the rolls and have been going into the TIF will now flow to your school district, your community college, the state, the park and rec, the library, all of the places that it's really supposed to go, to be quite honest with you. Again, I think that's probably the most important piece of all of this, is that we're going to return this to the tax rolls. I'm going to stop there for a second. Are there any are there any questions that we have about that? You know, I mean, I'd like to point out that I've got Richard Webb and Trevin Reed are both on the line if there's any questions that I can't answer, but I do want to stop right there and just see if there's any questions, because this is the most important agreement. The rest of these are really procedural and legal. This is the deal. So if there are questions, I'd like to open the floor to them right now. And I can't see anybody, so
I can't either, so. Speak up if you have a question and we'll recognize you. Don't hear any? Go on forward.
Okay, thank you. So really the termination agreement, that's your meat and potatoes. So the resolution that you'll be voting on tonight has that termination agreement. The next agreement is the acknowledgement and release. The existing RDA that we're living under right now was signed on to by Merriam Investors, which is Dave Block and Dave Christie, as lead developers, Mr. Webb or Merriam Luxury Import as co-developers in the city. In order, the acknowledgement and release is what we call them the Daves. Dave Block and Dave Christie are essentially saying that they have been, the terms of the existing RDA, they have been paid out, all of the obligations have been met, and they are no longer a part of the deal. So they are signing out of the RDA, very similar to what Hendrick did. Hendrick, once the obligations were made to Hendrick signed themselves out of the deal because they don't need to be a part of it anymore. So that the acknowledgement release is simply a form that says that Merriam Investors have been made whole and all obligations have been met. Once that's done, because they were lead developers, they have to fill out the next agreement, which is an assignment of developer rights. That simply says that they, as the lead developers, are conveying the rights as lead developer to the co-developer, which is Richard Webb. The fourth agreement is an escrow agreement. The escrow agreement basically governs where the $5 million will go. We are going to put $5 million in escrow. There has been a last minute change. Joe Serrano called me at 6 o'clock, and at 5:30, something has changed in that agreement. The only thing that's changed in that agreement is that in the agreement as it is in the packet, the escrow was going to distribute to lead bank. The $5 million was never going to go directly to Richard Webb. It was going to go to his creditors, the people that loaned him the money to do the work on track B. That is now going to go to Blue Ridge Bank. Now that shouldn't change the resolution, which is the controlling document. So council can still approve the resolution, and we'll simply just have the mayor sign updated agreements that instead of saying lead bank, we'll say Blue Ridge Bank. I don't have a personal concern with this. Joe Serrano did not have a concern with this either. It doesn't change the intent. It doesn't change anything materially other than who gets the distribution. And again, if Mr. Webb agrees to where that money is designed to go or where it's directed to go, we don't have any hesitation or reservations about that. And then there's the termination and release of covenants, easements, and reservations. Pretty much as the site was developing, there was a declaration that all developers had to abide by. It's essentially a layer of, I don't know, bureaucracy, if you will, that laid over the whole Merriam Point development. But since Merriam Point is built out, they can wipe all the restrictions away, and it effectively cleans the title for Mr. Reed to purchase it. So essentially what this is all of the property owners in Merriam Point have to sign this. You'll notice in the packet, we've got all signatures except for one. We're still working on some folks that are on the East Coast, but it is spelled out in the resolution that until we have all those signatures, we're not going to sign that agreement. Again, that's not anything other than us simply acknowledging that they agreed to it, but it is spelled out in the resolution that until everybody signs it, we're not doing anything with it. Again, if we approve the resolution, the next resolution that we would have would be a resolution for transfer of I-35 TIF funds. Essentially, we have two I-35 TIF accounts. We need to transfer money out of one of those into the other one, so we have $5 million in one combined account. It's really just an accounting issue, but it does require a resolution. In your packet, you'll find that there is a 5-year budget projection for the TIF. You'll see at the end of 5 years, even with yanking these Merriam Point projects out, we still have a balance in there of about $7.2 million. So we still are going to have healthy balances in there, even with paying the $5 million to Mr. Webb, should that be the council's desire, and still deliver on some projects and economic development activities should they arise. That being said, I'd like to say that Mr. Webb specifically asked that I thank the council and the staff for their support in this. It's been a long time coming, but he wanted to make sure that I did appreciate, or did share his appreciation with the council and with staff. And he's as difficult as this was, he has continued to keep the faith and continue to try to deliver on his vision for that site. So I appreciate his efforts, because again, if not for him, this would still assess at zero and would have zero economic value to anybody. It really took him looking at it and saying he thought he could do something with it, and the city deciding to partner with him as an equity partner, which is, I think, why we do TIF. So that being said, before I turn it over to Brian, I will pause for any additional questions if council has them.
Okay. Still, I can't see anyone, so you'll have to speak up. Any questions?
Okay, if no further questions, I'm gonna hand it off to Brian to briefly share with you the.
I do just have one. I think I missed it in your slides, but the year that all of this started, like way back in the timeline when we first got this land agreement together and started.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
When was the first year all of the everything started in the timeline? I was looking at
2004 is when the original, maybe the negotiations started in 2003, but 2004 is really when the initial redevelopment agreement started.
Okay, so 16 years we'll have a fully functioning, wonderful property tax generating tract there, assuming the sale goes through. And
that would be the hope. I think it's a pretty good deal for the taxpayers, for our business partners, and this is why we do TIF.
Wonderful. Thank you for answering that.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
this is Chris Hans. I do want to say that we have had a lot of discussion about this. I have personally with Chris, as well as reading a lot of documents. It's not that we have just absorbed it in his 15-minute conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It's taken a lot more of that for us to understand what's going on. But thank you, Chris.
Yeah, especially for the benefit of those people watching who may wonder why this is such a huge thing and very little questions asked. And that's very true. But also, we've been building up for this, I know, in the last year, and we kind of expected all this. There's been some twists and turns, but everything's worked out in the sense that everyone will benefit in a way that's appropriate. And certainly our city will continue to benefit for many, many years to come as a result of this action. So it's a good point. Go ahead, Mr. Engel.
If there's no further questions for me, I'm going to hand this off to Brian to briefly cover these planning commission items, and we'll start up the motions.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Let me see if I can share my screen. All right, everybody should see my screen now. It has the development plan, one sheet out of the development plan. I'm not going to go through the history of the site. Chris has done an excellent job on that. So I'm going to jump right into the development plan that the Planning Commission acted upon this month. Up is north, so frontage road is here to the right. I-35 is to the right of frontage road. Railroad tracks is to the left. Infinity is to the north. And Hyundai is all the way to the south. Where you see existing car dealership, that is the Reed Jeep Chrysler Dodge Ram dealership that has been completed and opened. And when you see to the north of the existing dealership, that is what's known as Track B, just simply for ease of nomenclature all the way through this process, because it's been replatted a number of times. So that's why we all call it Track B. As you can see, it shows the development of a parking lot for the benefit of the new Reed dealership. As you can see, there's a couple of connections that connected up to the Reed dealership. This is showing about 364 parking spaces. So in total, the Reed dealership will have 615 parking spaces, which is a really good thing for the Reed dealership. They have obviously a need for storage and show of vehicles, and so it was something that they're needing. They were doing a large amount of offsite storage of vehicles and things like that. So this is going to really help them increase their sales and really do the favor for them in this site, as well as obviously Merriam for the sales generation. On this map, also on this sheet, you also see up here it says future dealership. I believe you can see the outline. This is a proposed outline of a future dealership. When they put together this development plan, we asked them to design the plan so that a new dealership could readily be placed in there. I think it is important to note, though, that when that new dealership comes online, they will have to go back through the preliminary development plan process and the final development plan process as well. So with that, next thing is simply the landscape plan. They're doing an excellent job of landscaping. Landscaping is very much in line with what the Reed dealership has in place right now. I think it's important to note that by combining this lot with the Reed dealership lot, the amount of green space on the two gets to almost 20%, which is the standard for all the other dealerships that are along West Frontage Road. So again, it's a great deal to put these two together. Then I'll quickly get away from the preliminary development plan, and then we'll go to the plat. The plat essentially combines the two lots, what we call Track B and the Reed automobile dealership, which are on separate lots. Since they're going to combine this together as part of the development plan, so the parking lot to the north will be with an actual building. So that's the purpose of this, is to make two lots into one. When the new dealership on the Track B is built, they can come back in and split these lots again and make them into two lots if they so desire. But at this point in time, there's a need to combine them to make it conform with the preliminary development plan, and again, make sure that the parking lot has an actual building that's associated with it. So again, Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the preliminary development plan, and the Planning Commission did accept and approve this plat. So it's before you seeing for the acceptance of easements. So for that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. And I can only see a few of you on my screen. So again, if anybody's got questions, please shout them out. I see a question from Mr. Pape.
Hey, Bob.
There you go. Bob.
Let me unmute myself. Sorry about that. Are the elevations of the new lot and the existing Reed property, are they roughly the same, or is there a difference in elevations?
Yeah, excellent question. The lot, if you drive by there, obviously the lot goes from Reed from the high point and slopes down towards infinity. Another great positive of making this one development is it really reduces the amount of retaining walls that are going to be required. If it had been a separate lot as Group 1 originally envisioned, there would be a retaining wall along the north side of Reed and a retaining wall on the south side of what Track B is, and been a big valley between the two. But since they combine it, they can grade it together so that there is a reduction in the amount of retaining walls. And so they're going to be able to grade it so that it works well together, so they can eliminate the retaining walls that in between the two lots. There'll still be retaining walls on the backside towards the train tracks.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Anyone? Okay, go ahead and do your presentation.
Well, that concludes my presentation, so I will pass this back to Mr. Engel.
Okay.
All right. I'm happy to answer any questions. Other than that, when Brian's going to stop sharing the screen here, and I'm happy to answer any questions about any of those. Again, we've got a series of motions. I guess if there aren't any questions for me, we have Joe Serrano from Kutek Rock, who's our bond counsel on the line. We do have Mr. Webb on the line. We have Trevin Reed on the line. Any of us would be happy to answer any questions. If there aren't any questions, then we can roll into the motions that are in the packet. What looks like Mr. Silvers.
I know this might seem like an odd question, but looking at the parking lot on plot B, is there a plan that the city helps with snow removal? Because it looked to me like the whole lot was surrounded by what would be parked cars. Does that snow get pushed across the street on frontage road? Does it get pushed down into the creek? Does it get trucked off?
Snow removal is the responsibility of the property owner. I can tell you that if they push it in the street, they will have I'm pretty sure they will have a visit from Public Works. So they are responsible for getting rid of it themselves. Obviously, there's a lot of different ways they can do it. There is drainage on site. So a lot of large parking lot places do. They make a big pile of it somewhere on the parking lot. That's out of the way. And then as it melts, the on-site drainage takes care of it. That would most likely be my guess as to how they would handle it.
I assumed that, but it looked like there was going to be cars parked around the entire perimeter. I didn't know where they would stack it, so it just made me wonder if it would end up in the creek or on city easement.
It will end up in the creek in a slow melt.
Any other questions? Meredith, you want to reinstate my video? Come out.
Yeah, will it not let you just turn it on?
Well, it says the host
Oh.
has asked you to start your vehicle. Okay. All right, here we go. Very good. Are any other questions before we entertain a motion? Because I think we're at that point. Are we not, Mr. Engel?
Yes, sir, we are.
Okay. All right. Well, Bob, did you want to make a motion or do you have a question? Okay, turn on your mic. I'll accept the motion. Okay.
Okay, thank you. I'd move that the council approve a resolution terminating the Merriam Point redevelopment project and authorize the mayor to sign the effectuating documents.
Motion made. Go ahead.
Chris Hansen, I'll second that.
Motion and seconded made. Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Caldwell.
Aye.
Councilmember Knapp.
Aye.
Councilmember Neal. Councilmember Pape.
Aye.
Councilmember Silvers.
Aye.
Councilmember Yodridge.
Aye.
Councilmember DeBold.
Aye.
Councilmember Hands.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Very good. Then we have a second motion on the transference of funds. So would someone like to make that motion in a second? Chris Hands?
Yeah. I move that the council approve a resolution transferring funds from the I-35 TIF-B CIP fund to the I-35 TIF-B District Fund.
And do I have a second? Bob Pitt.
I'll second, Mayor.
We have a motion second, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Knapp.
Aye.
Councilmember Neal.
I have my mic on this time. Aye.
Councilmember Pape.
Aye.
Councilmember Silvers.
Aye.
Councilmember Yodridge.
Aye.
Councilmember DeBold.
Aye.
Councilmember Hands.
Aye.
Councilmember Caldwell.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Very good. Thank you so much. We're going to move out of the mayor's report and into planning commission.
We've got two more motions.
I'm sorry. They're under planning commission, aren't they? Let me look at mine. All right, we got two more motions. The next one's consider approval of preliminary development plan for the automobile dealership located at 7020 and 7000 West Frontage Road. I need a motion and a second. Bob Pate.
I would move, Mayor, that the council concur with the recommendation of the planning commission and approve with conditions a preliminary development plan for the parking lot expansion for an automobile dealership generally located at 7000 and 7020 or 7020 West Frontage Road, and authorize the mayor to sign the effectuating ordinance.
And a second, Jason Silvers.
I second that motion.
Their motion and a second. Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Neal.
Aye.
Councilmember Pape.
Aye.
Councilmember Silvers.
Aye.
Councilmember Yodrich.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVold.
Aye.
Councilmember Hans.
Aye.
Councilmember Caldwell.
Aye.
Councilmember Knapp.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Very good. And then the next item is consider acceptance of dedications of easements of Merriam Point 8th plat. I need a motion. Chris Hans.
Yes, I move that the council accept the dedication of easements shown on the Merriam Point 8th plat.
And do I have a second? Bob Pape.
A second, Mayor.
Motion and second made, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Pape.
Aye.
Councilmember Silvers.
Aye.
Councilmember Yodrich.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVold.
Aye.
Councilmember Hans.
Aye.
Councilmember Caldwell.
Aye.
Councilmember Knapp.
Aye.
Councilmember Neal.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Very good. There's one more item from the Planning Commission for consideration. And before we begin on that, I've assured Ms. Yedrich that she would have the opportunity to make the motion. So before we get to that point, please, Brian, would you update us on this issue?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Brian Dyer, Community Development Director. Just a short bit of history. Back on June 8th of this year, the council, recognizing that one of its goals and objective is to encourage participation in sustainability initiatives, requested the Planning Commission to review the solar panel installation ordinances for the city. Specifically, the City Council asked the Planning Commission to look at the possibility of revising the ordinances so that there was no need to get a conditional use permit for the installation of solar panels, go to the Planning Commission, allow solar panels to face the right-of-way, and to eliminate the abandonment and disrepair provisions of the solar panel regulations. On August 5th, the Planning Commission reviewed the request and concurred with the City Council's recommendation and requested staff to draft ordinances to that extent. Then on September 2nd, this month, the Planning Commission reviewed the ordinance that's included in your packet and unanimously recommended approval of that ordinance. Again, just to review the ordinance, it eliminates the need to go into the Planning Commission for approval of a conditional use permit to install solar panels. It also allows solar panels to face the right-of-way. It removes provisions for the abandonment and disrepair of solar panels. Again, just to be clear, the city still has the capability to pursue solar panels that get into disrepair through our nuisance ordinance, just like we do something like chipped and peeling paint or a fence that's in disrepair. And we also still will require the issuance of building permits. So when a building permit is submitted for a solar panel installation, they'll need to provide us the information that you are required for the building code, as well as the remaining information that's going to be required in the zoning regulation. Essentially, the remaining information is aesthetic. Simply says solar panels need to be of a dark color. They can't be a bright metal. The installation has to, again, has to be of a dark metal, as well as hide all the necessary wires and things like that that go along with the solar panel installation. So that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the council has.
Chris Hands, you have a question?
Actually, I have two. One, just out of curiosity, when was the last time we touched this ordinance? And then the second one is, how many solar installations do we have at this point?
I believe this is a revision, I want to say from 2011 or 12, so it's been a few years. I can get you the installations that we've had since this ordinance went into place. We do not have a track of the solar installations that occurred before this went into place, but I can get a number for that. I want to say it's around 15, but I will put that together and we'll get that out to the council.
Part of why I'm curious about finding that out is to see if this has been any kind of a barrier, if it makes it more accessible for people to install.
Understand. So yes, we'll get you that information. We have that.
And was there
Mr.
two
Mayor, I
questions?
have a, oh, sorry.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I
Chris,
have
you
a question.
Okay. Go ahead.
Chris, are you done?
Yeah, are you done, Chris? I thought you had two, or maybe you had two. No. Okay. All done. Whitney, go right ahead.
Okay.
Sorry about
Would solar collection systems, those would be covered by the sustainability grant that we're offering in the 2021 budget, right?
That is correct. It would.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Whitney, would you like to make a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move that the council concur with the recommendation of the Planning Commission and approve an ordinance amending Chapter 74 of the Merriam Code of Ordinances related to the installation of solar collection systems.
And I need a second. Christine?
This is Chris, and I would love to second that.
Motion made and seconded. Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Silvers,
I gladly vote yay.
Councilmember Yodrich,
Aye.
Councilmember DeBold,
Aye.
Councilmember Hands,
Aye.
Councilmember Caldwell,
Aye.
Councilmember Knapp,
Aye.
Councilmember Neal,
I enthusiastically support this. It's a good thing. Aye.
Councilmember Pape. Councilmember Pape,
Aye.
motion passes 8-0.
Very good. All right, we're going to move into finance and administration. The next two items, the staff will make a presentation covering both items. Again, hold questions till the end of the presentation, and then we'll go through the questioning process. First one's consider approval of coronavirus relief funds subrecipient grant agreement with Johnson County. Stringle or Meredith, whoever has this.
Yeah, I'll be presenting on this evening.
Okay.
So as part of the city, part of the agreement with Johnson County for the city to receive funding through the Coronavirus Relief Fund and the CARES Act, we need to execute a subrecipient grant agreement with Johnson County. As you may know, Johnson County received this grant funding from the federal government, and then it is their job to distribute it to the cities. And this agreement is just kind of the paperwork that goes along with us receiving it. So it's pretty administrative. We have already submitted a round of funding to the county and been reimbursed for almost $68,000 in actual costs. We have about $7,000 more in actual costs that we are tracking and in the process of getting reimbursed for right now. And then we have put together a list of items that we've received pre-approval from the county for that we are eligible to be reimbursed for. And so we are working on pulling together the necessary documentation, quotes, etc., to be able to purchase those items and get reimbursed. I've put together, I'm going to share my screen. I've put together just a high-level overview for you so you can see how we have kind of the big categories that we've been reimbursed for already. We've done some testing and well, not contact tracing, but the category is called testing and contact tracing. When we went through to the stay-at-home order, we spent about $50,000 improving our electronic services that we provide to residents and getting employees the technology they needed to work from home. We spent about $6,000 in PPE and then about $18,000 in public health expenses, which is really like sanitizing equipment, wipes, things we need to keep our facilities clean. The planned expenses, the list that we have put together and have discussed with the county so far is upgrades to our conference room, AV systems, and extending Wi-Fi throughout our facilities and on the campus. Expanding our electronic service delivery through electronic plan submission in the community development department, and being able to text defendants in municipal court. We've actually been texting defendants manually, and that has really helped during this process, but we're proposing purchasing some technology that will connect with our court system and allow us to do it automatically. What we realized during the stay-at-home order is that most of our employees have desktops, which made it really challenging for those who needed to work from home. So we are putting together a laptop pool for employees to be able to use if they have to work from home, and also they can check out to use if they want to work other places on the city campus. We're doing some upgrades to our doors and our restroom facilities. And then we're adding some additional sanitizing equipment for both the air and our surfaces. So all in all, we have about $305,000 in planned expenses. Our total allocation from the county was almost $349,000. And so we will continue tracking actual expenses through the end of the year. And I do expect that we will expend that $44,000 that's left over in actual expenses before the end of December. So it looks like we'll be able to capture 100% of this grant funding that's available to us. So I'm happy, I'll answer questions on that in one moment. I'll just also add that the second item that's up for consideration tonight is establishing a new fund in the city financial system that would track this grant funding separately from our general fund. We need council approval to create that fund, and that's where the grant money would go into and the expenditures would hit as well. So it's like money in, money out, but it will allow us to track it better for auditing purposes that are required by both our audit and the agreement that we will need to sign with Johnson County. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about the funding or the agreement.
Bob Pay?
Yeah, Meredith, I was just curious, it kind of applies to the next one as far as establishment of the federal grant to track that. Do we need to designate it as just a federal grant, or should it just be a grant system or grant program that would cover both state, local, and the county and the federal? Should we designate it as federal, or should it just be maybe just a grant to track all grants?
You know, I know Donna is on the line, and Donna, I'll let you maybe speak to that. You may know that answer better than I do.
We actually could designate it that way, and it would give, it would open it up more. I guess we were just focusing on this particular situation. I think right now we're looking at mainly receiving federal funds, because the funds that we're receiving from the county are really federal funds that are coming down through the county to the city. So I think calling it the grant fund would be fine, but.
Okay. How do we track, Donna, or other grants that, say our CARS grants and any other grants we might get for police grants that they might receive for equipment? Is that tracked separately, or?
Right now, Right now, things like the CARS grants are recorded in the capital projects where they occur. And even with the establishment of a grant fund, you're still going to put those funds over in the capital project. So it doesn't really apply to CARS grants or grants that are doing that. A police grant is, the way we've been doing it has been recording it in the general fund, but expanding this and allowing those type of grants to also be put in the grant fund would really make a lot of sense.
I think another thing to distinguish between this fund and other grants are we expect to receive those, so they're budgeted. You know, CARS funds,
Right.
we anticipate receiving CARS funds because we budget for them. CDBG, well, we're not really supposed to budget for them. We expect them. CARES funding is completely off budget. So if we were to make these expenditures out of our regular accounts, those we potentially could go over on our budgeted amounts in the PD, in admin, any of those other things. So there is a little bit of a difference. I like the idea of just having it be a grant fund. I think it's a great idea, Bob. But that is the distinguishing, I think the distinguishing feature with the grants that we want to put in here versus the other ones. We anticipate the other ones. So this would really be something like if we had a disaster and sought a FEMA funding for something like that, we would funnel those funds into this account. Would that be correct, Donna?
Yes, that is correct.
I think there's different grant management regulations too that the federal government has versus the state. Scott, you had a question, and then I think Mr. Neal has a question.
Yeah, just real quick. I thought I read somewhere, and it might have been from Chris or from someone, that there had to be specific tracking of this money that came from this specific fund, so that creating a separate fund was going to make it easier to track exactly where every dollar went, which I think they were expecting us to account for. Am I correct in that?
Yes.
You are correct. You are correct in that. I will say, however, most, or I would say every grant that I've ever come across has that type of special requirement where when the auditors come in, they're going to look at those expenditures closer than they are non-grant expenditures. And so being able to segregate those is always a good thing.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Neal, do you have a question?
Well, yeah, a question and a comment. Pretty much similar to Councilmember Diebold's comment. Having worked a little bit on, or actually quite a bit this spring on some of the stuff with federal aid to local governments, it just seems to me, unless there's a compelling reason to kind of open it up, just that it might be better to leave it as a separate entity. Is there some compelling reason why we should do it the other way? I'm thinking from a reporting standpoint, from a quick response, should they expand the program, it would seem to me to maybe just leave this as a federal pool right now. And if we need to change it, I assume, can we change it later to add other sources? That's a question.
Yes, you could.
Yeah. I think Mr. Pape can certainly speak for himself, but I presume his recommendation was to make this so it would be more convenient just to be able to put all grants concerning coronavirus in the same funding location. But either way, it all works out either way, I'm sure. So, any other questions on this item? Okay, well, Mr. Knapp.
Yes, if there's a second coronavirus bill with funding, would the money go into the same account? That's one question. And then could you send out the slide that had the actual and planned expenses in the admin report?
Absolutely, I can send that slide out. So we don't actually get the money up front. It is all reimbursement based. And so that's one of the reasons to have the fund set up, is because we need a place to charge the expenses to while we wait to get reimbursement for that money. So it's not actually just deposited into our account.
Chris Hans?
I really don't have a question, but It's pretty obvious, even though this is called the Johnson County Relief Fund Agreement, that this is all federal language, and some of it's fairly ridiculous for the situation. Just a comment.
That's a shock, federal government. Okay, well, I think we've heard enough, and I think we're ready, at least for the first, to consider approval of the Coronavirus Relief Fund grant agreement. So I would accept the motion in a second for that. Chris Hands, Bob Pape.
Yep. This is Chris Hands, and I move that the council approve the subrecipient grant agreement with Johnson County for coronavirus relief funds.
Mr. Pape.
I'll second, Mayor.
Motion made second, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Yodrich.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVold.
Aye.
Councilmember Hands.
Aye.
Councilmember Caldwell.
Aye.
Councilmember Knapp.
Aye.
Councilmember Neal.
Aye.
Councilmember Pape.
Aye.
Councilmember Silvers.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Motion passes, and then we have first, I guess, a move that the council waive the first reading. So this would be for the federal ordinance for establishing the federal grant fund. So we need to waive the first reading. So I need a motion and a second to waive the first reading. Anyone want to jump in on that? Bob Pape, Chris Hands. We'll go opposite.
Okay, Mayor, I'd move that the council waive the customary first reading of the ordinance establishing a federal grant fund.
Mr. Mayor, this is Chris Hands. I second.
Motion made second, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember DeVold.
Aye.
Councilmember Hands.
Aye.
Councilmember Caldwell.
Aye.
Councilmember Knapp.
Aye.
Councilmember Neal.
Aye.
Councilmember Pape.
Aye.
Councilmember Silvers.
Aye.
Councilmember Yodrich.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
And back to that issue, I'll need a motion to move that the council approves to establish an ordinance establishing a federal grant fund. So I need a motion and a second. Bob Pape, and go right ahead, Bob. And Neal, Mr. Neal, second.
I would move that the council approve an ordinance establishing a federal grant fund.
Mr. Neal.
I'd like to second that.
Motion made and seconded, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Hands.
Aye.
Councilmember Caldwell.
Aye.
Councilmember Knapp.
Aye.
Councilmember Neal.
Aye.
Councilmember Pape.
Aye.
Councilmember Silvers.
Aye.
Councilmember Yodrich.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVold.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Very good. Next item on the agenda is the monthly finance report. August's report was included in the packet. Donna, are there any updates or comments you want to make about the August finance report?
I wasn't going to, but I will say, as has been reported in the admin report, we've been pleased that the sales tax has been coming in much better than we anticipated when we were doing the budget, and I think that's the real story of the financials right now.
Okay. Any questions about the finance report before we move on? Okay, very good.
Keep up the good work.
Yep. Let's move out of this arena then and move into community development updates. Brian, would you please provide a staff update on this item?
Sure. Just in brief, the Reed Automotive, as I mentioned earlier, their building has a certificate of occupancy. It's somewhat limited occupancy, but they are in the building and moving over there. And then also the Schweitzer Senior Villas project. They have landscaping they need to finish, but they provide us with assurances that that landscaping will be completed, and we've issued CFOs for all the remaining units in that building, in that project. So that development has all the CFOs for it. So that's all I had this evening. Thank you, Mayor.
Very good, thank you. We'll move to staff items. Chris, are there any staff items this evening?
Have none at this time. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Given there's a Chiefs game on right now, Bob, go right ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, is Reed going to have a grand opening or celebration or anything? Or is that in the works?
I do not know. I'll inquire to the Reed folks and see what they say.
Okay, that's all I need. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, well, there's no new business. So I'll entertain a motion and a second to adjourn. Bob Pate.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn, get to the Chiefs game.
And who would like to second that?
I'll second that. Not Debo.
All right. We got a motion second. Madam Clerk.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Go Chiefs.
Bye.